This is the GoodBadMad podcast. I'm your host, Meg Elys, and I sit down with some of your favourite creatives to talk about the creative life. We talk film, theatre, literature, fashion, and more. We explore what goes into building a creative career. This episode, we chat with actor and producer Eric Baer. He started his career at age 9 in Annie Hall, but later went on to explore the world of tech. Now in his filmmaking renaissance, Eric is pushing the boundaries of independent motion capture with his series Belonging, now available on Apple TV. So, tell me, how are you?
I'm feeling fabulous. I mean, we just had this premiere on Friday.
Oh, how exciting. Was that a festival?
No, it was our coming out party. It was just for us. We were celebrating. We launched on Apple TV on Thursday, and then we got all 7 of the directors from around the world gathered together in LA at the Lumiere on Friday for our kind of coming out party.
Is that the first time they'd all been together collectively?
There was one festival that showed it, but this is the first time many of us met. So we had produced this over pandemic. So, and we can talk about this.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely excited to kind of go into the ins and outs. But let's kind of go right back to the beginning. First, because at GoodBadMad, we're all kind of about giving insight into creative careers and really sharing and mentoring upcoming creatives so that they can just find information a little bit easier. You know, it's a tough industry if you don't have the connections or the training or the establishment around you. So we like to kind of dive into people's personal stories. And I know from doing my little research, you all started quite young.
I both started young and I started old.
But you started as an actor.
I started out as a human being.
Well, yes.
And Woody Allen came to PS40. I was in 2nd grade, and he picked out a bunch of funny-looking kids for Annie Hall, and so that was the first film I was in.
Yeah.
And I had this bit of a meme line: "I used to be a heroin addict, now I'm a methadone addict."
I mean,
and that got me into the Screen Actors Guild. It was before SAG and AFTRA had merged, and then I grew up in musical theater, singing, dancing, using the whole instrument. And then I had a jazz dance teacher when I was 20 advise me not to go into performing arts. Being a white, male, privileged, happy-go-lucky kid, I didn't know suffering. I didn't have anything to say. And I, not because of what she said, but that comes back later. I decided to go into tech.
Right.
I had studied cognitive science, cognitive psychology, and computer science, and I went off to be a tech entrepreneur. And so I spent 3 decades in a totally different field. I mean, invention and patent licensing and designing products for people in everyday life.
And was that choice, I mean, not to be too intrusive, but was that choice primarily dictated by that kind of, this is a really tough industry, or was it because you had this more curiosity and just wanted to explore different areas?
No, I didn't know anything about the acting industry at the time. It was because I had this incredible skill to gather people together, to create teams, to create technology, and to make really good money doing that. So I was fortunate in that way, and I was just kind of drove to do what I was able to do in the world as a productive person. But then it was really missing. The performing arts aspect was missing, and then I remembered what that jazz dance teacher had said to me, and I had been through some stuff. My partner is a cancer survivor. I've raised 2 kids, out of orphanages, which comes with this whole world of stuff. And the businesses, we had been through the boom and bust a couple of times. What came back, what she had said to me, I was like, oh, Eric Baer knows suffering. I can perform now. I
I've
have something to
lived.
say, right? You know what I'm saying? So I sold my last company, and I went back to conservatory to kind of unlearn everything I had thought I knew about performing and relearn how to just be an ordinary person on camera and on stage, just like we are in everyday life. Because there's these layers of nonsense that we put on when we think about acting that are habitually needed to be unwound.
That's a really lovely way of putting it, actually. It's like, although it's performing arts, it's stripping away the performance element that you had when you were younger, and putting the emotion and the human element into it of your experience when you're older.
Yeah, exactly.
That's such a lovely way to put it. And then when was this? Was this pre-pandemic when you started to retrain?
Yeah, it was the perfect storm, Meg. It was pre-pandemic. 2018 was my first year of conservatory. So 2018, 2019, 2 years intensive conservatory, and then
Boom.
boom, pandemic. And then we moved to Zoom for classes.
Yes,
and
we did.
That was phenomenal because you could take classes all over the world. I was taking classes in LA and classes in New York, and then I was collaborating with people in Australia and classes in the UK. I was studying performance capture with Victoria Atkin. And so that really opened up the connections. But it was really the pandemic that kind of kicked me into performance capture, because it was a way to.
It does sound like your two worlds completely aligned.
Yeah, for better or for worse, I think. Because I really wanted to get away from tech. I was like living in this yin intellectual world, and I wanted to drop so deeply into my heart and my body and just live from connection and humanity. But being a reasonably smart person and facile with tech, I got connected up with this performance capture stuff, which I could do really easily because it was just, I could do that stuff.
Now that I envy, because as part of this, I did some research into this tech, and it is confusing and complicated.
And we should talk about some of that and simplify and kind of demystify it.
100%. That's definitely something I wanted to dive into with you, because to a layman like myself, like you obviously you go to the movies and you see these incredible things, you see video games and all these things, and you're just like, damn, that's impressive. You never quite think about how it actually comes together until you're looking at the tech and the Unreal engines and all of that. So was that stuff you were familiar with before this project, or?
No, I mean, I was familiar with the concept of performance capture and motion capture. It was a dream of mine to do, like be in Planet of the Apes movies, do primate stuff, like really dropping into the body and forget about the words. Let's just go for authentic presence.
I mean, it's an incredible transformation.
And I was able to connect it with Terry Notary, who choreographed much of the work. Planet of the Apes, he made me custom arm extensions for my body size, and I would go out and do learn how to amble as a quadruped. It was really embarrassing for my kids because my partner would be holding the dog on the leash, and then I'd be like, ambling on the hike and bike trail, and my kids were like, my parents are fucked.
That's so much. But it's also that's something I love about actors. It's just that I don't give a damn. I'm going to explore the full breadth of mind, body, and soul, like for good, for bad, whatever, you're going to do it. And that is something that I find incredibly impressive.
So it was because of the primate stuff that I started to learn the Unreal. I built a home capture studio in my home. And I reached out to these manufacturers who make the suits, who make the gloves, who make the helmets, and I was like, I want to do accurate primate capture in an indie fashion. How do we do that?
Yeah.
And they just didn't have it set up. Like they had a suit that was made for bipeds, human beings. And I was like, well, but my arms are going to be 1.5 feet longer, and my hands need to be at the ground, not up where I'm holding the grip. How do we do that? And so, I was able to rewire their suit to virtually move my hand down to the ground when I was using the arm extensions. And because I had done that stuff, it's exactly what you were saying. It was that kind of left brain, right brain, embodied work, but also the technical. And then I was doing out of box tutorials, on how to do this stuff and how you can transform the systems. And, bizarrely became an influencer in the space. It was like, what is actually going on here? Was not my intention. I just wanted to make stuff and figure out how to embody it. And then it kind of came. Go ahead.
That's what is like the hook for me here. That's the curious thing. Is like I've never considered trying to bring that kind of tech down to an indie level. Like that's just not crossed my brain. I was like, oh, people just won't have the budget for that, or they won't have this, like the experience level and talent on an indie scale to be able to do what you're doing. So it's interesting for me that like you're breaking that barrier in a sense, and no wonder people are interested in it.
Well, I think so. It was when Epic Games came out with these metahumans. Do you know what a metahuman is? Should I describe that?
Please describe it, because although I looked into it, I can't say I've got a strong definition.
Great. So in any 3D tool, whether it's a CAD, and where they're designing automobiles, for example, before they go and press them out of metal or fiberglass or whatever, they design them in a computer, and there's a model that you can see in 3D of an automobile. Or architects use tools to design a home. It's much better to design a product virtually before you start cutting wood.
Much cheaper too.
It's much cheaper to measure twice and cut once, and that's how you measure twice. And so metahumans are a model, just like a home or a car, but it's of a person. And they have all the layers, just like an architecture will have, the plumbing and the electricity and the HVAC systems, and then the facade and the furniture. The metahuman has a bone structure, it has muscles, it has skin, it has hair, it has all this stuff. And then the dependencies. So if you're to raise one part of the arm, then another part of the arm, things stretch. Or if you're to, lift part of your face, the other parts of the face that are attached to it move with it. Right. So everything is really beautifully constructed. And one of the companies that makes this fabulous face capture software and hardware asked me to help promote their stuff, Faceware. And I said, look, I don't know if this stuff can convey authentic emotions. Like, being beautiful is one thing, not particularly interesting to me. I've kind of graduated from being just plain excited about tech to only caring if it has human connection. That's what interests me. And so I said, look, I can do an experiment with these metahumans to see if acting the way I know how to act, which is not paying attention to what we look like on the outside, but not even paying attention, but just being present on the inside with the body, being connected to and attuned to your scene partner. And with whatever is arising, whether those feelings are love or sadness or longing or anger or frustration or whatever they are,
Yeah.
And so I said, like, I'll pick a bunch of monologues from plays that I've done and different dialects, because those exercise different muscle groups
Yeah.
in the
100%.
face and neck. And we'll do a test. And if it shows that it's promising, then I can help promote your stuff.
Mm.
If it's not, you can't have me, because I'm not gonna say something's great if it's not.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how it began. And I put out a call for directors. It was originally called the Metahuman Mocap Monologues.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was truly an
Great
experiment to see if I know I have a problem using alliterations. And it's the recovering Virgo in me. So I put out a call for directors, and I interviewed all these people. I hired 10 directors, very diverse, women, men, people of color, different sexual orientations, just so that we could have kind of diversity of directorial style and perspective and expression. And we started working with it, and it was phenomenal. Meg, it was just shocking that we could put no attention on the face, just feel the feelings on the inside, and they because it automatically comes out of your face.
Yeah.
When I was in school, Carol Hickey was my main coach, and I used my hands a lot. As a tech CEO, you present and use your hands. It's a lot of bullshit in the air. She had me sit on my hands a lot. And it turns out when you sit on your hands, the emotion can't come out through your arms.
Yeah.
So the only place for it left to come out is to like rise up and then come out through your eyes. And that is what we saw happening with these metahumans.
Yeah.
And we're like, wow, we can't this is not an experiment. This is truly an exploration into emotional richness. And some of the scripts we couldn't get rights to, so we had to chuck those, and we wrote 6 new scripts, Nikki Levy and I, and we were able to use 2 Shakespeare scenes, Tennessee Williams and a Eugene O'Neill. And that's when we said, this has got to go on a streamer. Like real people should experience this, because it's pretty darn good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm intrigued as to how, at what stage you added the face and the visual elements. Because if I'm right, you were the sculptor for.
Well, I'm not a 3D artist.
Yeah.
The Metahuman Creator tool that Epic Games makes is anyone can use it. It's fabulous. I showed it to my mother the other day. It was like totally understandable. And I don't, I sculpted the faces because I wanted them to look on the outside that I felt on the inside as those people. I don't see them in third person. I see them as a reflection of me in a phase shifted reality.
And did you do that before performing or after performing? Like at what point do you add before? So what you look like as the character.
Humanity is the very first most important thing. You can add scenes and weather and costumes and everything after the fact. But it's really about the presence as a person, as a being. So I sculpted the faces. That helped me. For some of them, I didn't really know who I was until I started sculpting these people, even while the scripts were in development. So it's a way, we look in the mirror and we see a reflection of who we think is us, right? It's really just the body. A really weird thing happened to me by doing this project. I played so many different people that I became less attached to this Eric Bear body as me. It really feels like it's an avatar that I wear in everyday life. And some days I wake up and I look at my hands and I say, wow, what skin do I have today? And so to take that back to the mirror, we look in the mirror and it tells us something about what we look like. And then we bind our identity to that look. it is not us, right? Because you can cut off your hand, you can cut off your arm, you can cut off your leg, you can cut off a whole lot of you, and we are not diminished. There's no less of us. There's less of our body, and our body is like a vehicle that carries us around. It's like a rental car for our time on this planet. So I see a question forming in your face.
I'm just thinking, as an actor, particularly the type of actor you are, that must be such a liberating experience. Like actors, especially nowadays, so grounded in aesthetic as an industry. Like, what you can alter your appearance, you can alter your weight, you can add prosthetics, you can do all sorts of things, but at that heart you still kind of are in the shell that you're in. But this adds a whole new element to acting. It's literally taking your experience, taking your soul, and giving it a completely different shell.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just good for acting, it's good for life. And it's good for spirituality. I mean, I grew up studying, I studied with Deborah Hay, the postmodern dancer, when I was very young. And so it was formative for me, this not knowing and playing awake and breaking down the boundary between being seen and seeing. And I studied with her again just a couple of weeks ago. I just spent 2 weeks in the studio with her and a couple dozen other dancer choreographers to kind of break down our habits of the ways in which we know how to move. And using our seeing the world around us to affect us. And then we move without any sense of craft work, of planning, of use of space, of things like that. And so this work in performance capture and motion capture and having different skins is like the aspiration of nirvana. It's kind of spiritually. As a Buddhist, there's this non-attachment to form, to this what we think is real, but it's not real. It's only this coalescence of matter temporarily, right? But the being and what's connecting is this effervescent aliveness, regardless. And so what you say, it's both. It's there's more flexibility to shape the way in which we appear, and less attachment to any particular form of it. Does any of that make any sense? I know it's fairly.
It does. It just sounds incredibly liberating, to be honest, and I'm a little bit jealous. I wish I could live my life like that sometimes.
Well, why can't you, Meg?
Oh, unfortunately, I don't have the body movement that you dancers have. I need to go do an anti-circus.
That's a story. That's a story you're telling yourself.
But in terms of, so you picked your scripts, and all the episodes, there's 10 episodes in Belonging, and
that's right.
They're all very emotional scenes. I mean, you set yourself in a monumental challenge. Not only were you testing this tech and producing this series, you were acting in it, doing multi-roles, acting against yourself. What was the toughest part of that experience for you?
Well, there was tough all over.
Yeah.
I had no idea what we were getting into when we did. I really thought that I could do this for, pocket change and a quick schedule. Really had no idea.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know the tech, and I didn't know what would be involved. So it just grew dramatically. I mean, thank goodness it did. And thank goodness we didn't know what we were doing. And thank goodness most of the directors didn't know what they were doing either.
Yeah.
Because people probably wouldn't have signed on.
Yeah.
And now having done it, they would. But seeing the, the way in which we had to pave that. I mean, software crashes all the time. You lose files. We shot the first previs in the summer of 21, and I was in the middle of shooting 1883 for Taylor Sheridan. And I had a beard scruff, and that just screwed up all the data. We shot all the stuff. The air conditioner broke in the studio. I mean, the computers melted down. It was amazing. And then not being able to get scripts. 6 of the scripts, I was calling and talking to managers and agents all over the world trying to get the rights to the 6 pieces that we couldn't get. And we already had crafted the wardrobes, we had done our camera work, everything. And then we got to reverse engineer. It was, I don't remember exactly how you phrased the question, but it was a really cool challenge to reverse engineer a brand new script with brand new characters into an arc that had already been shaped with characters and bodies and camera work. So we took old script and new script, and we lined it up to say, oh, what is the feeling here? What is the feeling here? What is the feeling here? Wrote brand new stories, but kept the shape of it so that we wouldn't have to go and rebuild all the stuff we had done for previs. And then when I wrapped on 1883, I got to shave my face, and then we just shot the entire season all from scratch.
That's insane. That's like, I mean, at one point, not at one point, at all points, I completely applaud you, because it sounds like for not just yourself, but everyone involved, you've made this creative playground, where there is no limits. You can, apart from a room size, but
That's right. But even then, you could have things move. I mean, some of the greatest things. So in Duck, it takes place at the magic hour. We have 2 magic hours in the day, right?
Yeah.
Sunrise, it's coming from the east when it's really low. Sunset when it's on the west and it's really low. Everything is golden and glowing and beautiful. But you got about 20 to 25 minutes to get some great takes in live action. And if you don't get it, you got to come back the next day. And if you don't get it, you come back the next day. So it makes for very expensive filmmaking. Or in Unreal Engine, you just hang the sun there and you can leave it there all day long. And in fact, it's not even there while we're shooting, because we're in kind of nowhere land. We're just shooting in a white room with tape markers that give me eye lines and some physical props that are made to match. Corey Williams built all these props on set. Most everybody was remote. The directors dialed in over Zoom, and they had a multi-camera view. We had cameras in the room, and then they could see the data feed from the Movella Xsense suit data. They could see the data, the raw data coming through, with the gloves from Manus, and then a face camera so they could see the expression up close. So we gave them this kind of dashboard so they could see what was going on, because they weren't physically there. But we did have to have a few people locally. Corey Williams was motion capture director. Luke Hill was the motion capture operator. And we were still COVID, so everyone was masked except for the actors. And there were just a couple of us in the room. Carly Christopher, who shot all the previs work, ended up with COVID and couldn't come down to shoot. So we were able to reuse some of her original footage in 3 of the episodes. And my partner, Jana, stepped in at the last minute, and she's not an actor.
Is she not? Oh, good for her.
No. And we were like, we need you to do this. So we got her to put on the suit and gave her the scripts real quick, and phenomenal, because she wasn't lost in any of the actor schmactor stuff. She could just be a real person. So it was so what I was going to say, what Corey did in the physical space. So mostly it's a blank space, but we have to have some props that match the artifacts in Unreal Engine. For example, in Duck, we made a boat out of a bookshelf balanced on top of it was like a piece of plywood with a bookshelf with coat hangers that the oars from my kayak went into, and then the whole thing was balanced on my heavyweight punching bag, so it was really uneven. And then my son and Corey held and rocked this boat. And the reason why it was so important for them to rock the boat is so that Jana and Eric, our bodies in this world, would get moved, and by being off balance. And then all the motion sensors in this X-Sense suit were real. It was organic. There was not animation, and that was just mapped onto Katie, Joe, and Apollo. And you see them moving because it's just what we did. So like all these things, we have physical artifacts, or like the horse in Richard II. We took a gymnastics mat from my daughter and stood it up and strapped on some rope and made stirrups. And Corey's down there on the ground looking at a video of a particular type of walk of a horse on YouTube. And he's rocking this mat in synchronization with the YouTube video. And that's causing my body to move with it, and so we had to make these things. No one ever sees them except in the behind the scenes, like in the closing
which
credits.
I love. Honestly, they're my favorite bit of like looking through the pitch deck, is seeing all these BTS shots, because it just reminds me of the bit I love the most about the industry, which is the mad bit, the crazy bit. Like, why do people put themselves in these situations? Because they enjoy it at the end of the day.
It's so fun.
Okay, so that leads me quite nicely onto my question, which is all the tools and tech that you used in this is readily available, either free or on the shelf, or it's not behind any barriers, So is that your hope that this series that you've made kind of encourages filmmakers and even tech geeks to kind of explore these different areas?
Absolutely. Look, there's two areas that interest me in influencing people, filmmakers and TV makers, and kind of aspiring young artists. One has to do with the tech. Sure, Unreal Engine is free for independent filmmakers. The Movella X-Sense suits can be bought, and its gloves, the helmets, and then go take classes with CG Pro, who has online classes to teach anybody how to learn to use these tools. It's absolutely available to anybody who's got time and interest in doing it. It's not rocket science. It's limited to kind of the bounds of your creativity and the risks you're willing to take. So that's one area. Democratizing filmmaking, because what would take hundreds of millions of dollars to make Planet of the Apes or the Avatar films, or the beautiful work on the latest Indiana Jones film, in de-aging Harrison Ford. It's like they put a young skin on him, right? Same concept, but here it is with tools that are accessible to independent filmmakers. So there's no reason to not do that. So that's one. The other really important influence that I'm interested in making, more importantly, is to not get lost in the tech. Is to not focus on exercising these things for the sake of doing it, but to be in the body, to be actors, directors, to be working with actors, to feel in the body, be in human connection with one another. Don't pay attention to the outside, pay attention to being present. And that's what's interesting to audiences, because it's humanity.
It's a exciting expansion of storytelling, really. And that's probably that's the most human thing in the world to me, is storytelling. And I don't know, it's fascinating to see how people like yourself are just kind of pushing the boundaries and exploring new things, and seeing what's coming next. So tell us about the future of Belonging. Is there going to be a series 2? It's on Apple?
I love being on Apple TV because it's nearly ubiquitous. Pretty much everywhere and Apple has incredibly high standards for what can be on there. So we're
They
in
do.
this pristine 4K presentation that, you know, I'm really proud of our team for having put that together. But we do have some pretty interesting ideas about where to go with this. You know, we can take some of these characters and expand their lives.
Yeah.
We can go to longer episodes. So instead of 5 to 7 minute shorts that make up a 1 hour experience, they can be, you know, like 1 hour episodes that make up a 10-hour series.
Yeah.
But more important than the form of it to me is the diversity that we can bring going forward. We were very constrained, right? I starred in every one of these in part because we were working within this budget. We were working within this COVID environment. There's a bit of training to do with the systems on learning a face and our facial capture. Fred Junqueira, you know, had to do a bunch of fine tuning of the lips and things like that. And he had to learn my face and learn Jana's face and learn Carly's face, but it was limited to that. So I'd like to see more diversity in actors and representation that we can get with a greater budget.
Creativity is the limit, you know. It's an exciting prospect. And
when I was dancing with Deborah Hay over the last couple of weeks, here's one. There were so many beautiful quotes. I have like a book of things that she said while we were dancing, but one of them that stuck out to me that seems pertinent here. She said, "I practice the impossible to access the deep ethics of optimism." And even just saying it to you, you know, it gives me the chills and I feel the poignancy effervescing in my face. It's like by doing what seems impossible allows us to stay connected with optimism. And we drive that with power and curiosity and not knowing.
That's a great quote. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, last question for you. I try and do a little roundup with all the guests to share just a quick summarized insight of their experience in their creative role. So what are the good parts of what you do? What are the bad parts? And what are the mad, crazy bits that you just cannot explain to someone who hasn't been in this industry?
The best is working with an actor's director. Is when I can turn over all the other hats that I'm wearing, you know, as executive producer and creator and scriptwriter, and then purely be an actor and be held within the space that a director holds for us as actors, to be fully alive in this alternate reality, in this other being, and feel the feelings richly, and the patience that's brought. And so, you know, the directors in Belonging, you know, were across the board actors, directors, and held a space for us. That's the best. That's where I come alive and I feel, and it doesn't matter whether I'm feeling positive emotions or negative emotions. You know, it could be angry, it could be frustrated, it could be despair, but that beauty is what makes me feel alive. And I love that. The bad, when you lose a take, there's a data file missing and you're like, fuck, that was the best take, you know, or the battery dies on your pack, you know, in the middle of the thing. Like there's stuff when you're in the heat of it. I don't know, like there's so many bad things that can go wrong, but it all comes out in the wash. So, you know, or your budget is 10 times as much as you thought it would be. You know, you deal with that. Okay, so that's the bad.
And the mad.
When the director or the writer is like, okay, now that I see this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna change this, like that, and then you got to memorize it, and then you not be in memorization place, but just be playing in the body, having just internalized it. And I mean, that's it is bananas to be able to move between worlds and do that on the fly with changes like that. And thank goodness, because then it just like, I mean, who doesn't like having the rug pulled out from under them?
It does give you this kind of creative adrenaline that I've not been able to replicate in any other
right
part of life. I would agree. That's always my favorite bit, is when you've got to just like drop everything and just focus on the task and make it happen to the best of your ability. If you had an actor, had a creative sitting in front of you saying, please, Eric, give me some advice. Tell me, how do I face this beast of an industry? What's kind of the little tidbit that you might give them?
Yeah, well, so, the biggest challenge for me, coming from an industry, a totally different industry, where I knew how to be successful using charisma and negotiating. You could drop me in a room, I could get people to spend money. I could get people to invest in a project, do a partnership, make it happen. All of those skills have not applied for me as an actor. It works for me as an executive producer, but it hasn't worked for me as an actor, because we self-tape, we throw it over the wall, and 99 out of 100 times, certainly for me so far, you never hear anything back. And so I went through a period of depression, the first depression I had ever experienced in my life, because I'd always been able to make shit happen. And nothing I knew about how the world worked was working in that place. There was no denouement. There wasn't like, hey, thanks for sending in your stuff, we decided to go a different direction. I mean, there's just not even that. So the advice that I would give, what I've come to, the way that I can be sane and feel alive, is to treat auditions as the performance. That 2-minute audition or 3-minute audition is the whole of it. Don't treat it like it's a test to see if you can get the role. Be that person. Be fully alive in that world. See the sights in that space. Smell the smells in that world. Feel the feelings in relationship to your scene partner, who may be a reader who's not an actor and is totally gucking it up. Doesn't matter. That is the performance. And that way we're performing every day because we choose to be a performer, and we get to live that rich realm of emotions. If you get the job, icing on the cake, but treat the audition as the work. And that's where we can stay alive and feel rewarded.
I think that's great advice. And I think it rather sums up everything that you've been saying throughout this chat, actually. Kind of live in the moment and just be present as a soul in work and life and whatever projects kind of come your way, which is a lovely thought to take, and definitely a lovely one to leave it on. So thank you very much for chatting with me. I've really enjoyed meeting you and chatting with you, and congrats so much on the project, and I really hope it goes well for you. Thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button if you want more Good Bad Mad. See you next time.